Rob Zombie went from a rock star to a relative cult-like director in terms of horror movies, and he has a cult-like following. But I think the last thing anybody would have expected, even after directorial debuts in The House of a Thousand Corpses and The Devil's Rejects, would be for him to take one of the biggest icons in slasher horror and turn the entire universe on its head. Whether it's good or bad, and there's very mixed reviews, Rob Zombie did something with Michael Myers that nobody else accomplished. He made him feel different. Zombie kicked it off with his original reboot in 2007, and most people enjoy that film much more than the sequel, which debuted in 2009, an August 2009 release date to be exact. I feel like the fact that the movie didn't come out in October, closer to Halloween, maybe left fans with a sour taste in their mouth right out the gate. But I felt like Rob Zombie's original Halloween was very solid. It gave us an origin story of Michael Myers, something that the original films never were able to accomplish. And with the slivers of positivity came a lot of negativity for that exact reason. Why do we need a human origin story? Why do we need to know what Michael Myers was like as a child? Why do we need to know about his family life when in the original set of films he wasn't even known as a human? He wasn't known as an actual being. He wasn't known as a physical form. He was known as the Shape, which is where evil took the place of a human form without any actual human characteristics and more based off of the animalistic side of humanity. Evil, animalistic, demonic, and just overall brutal. And brutality, crimson masks, and overall deep, dark, and twisted directing is exactly what Zombie is known for. The way the second film kicked off was absolutely incredible. For about 20 to 25 minutes of the second iteration of Zombie's Halloween universe, we got a much more brutal version of the original 1981 sequel, which coincidentally was the first video created in this horror discussion series. We got the hospital scene with Scout Taylor Compton, who played Laurie Strode, being taken to Haddonfield Memorial Hospital following the events of the original film. However, Tyler Maine's version of Michael Myers would not be far behind, as he would break away from the van that was carrying his thought-to-be-deceased body and find his way to Laurie inside Haddonfield Memorial Hospital. The hospital scene was amazing. The hospital scene was magic in a brutal, dark, and twisted way. However, just as Michael was able to catch up to Laurie Strode with the fireman's axe, Laurie Strode woke up from a night terror. And that's where everybody's thoughts on the Rob Zombie sequel in Halloween 2 changed drastically. But this is where I believe people got it wrong. Too many people believed that the Halloween sequel that Rob Zombie created was based off the story of Michael Myers, was based off of this machine that wasn't necessarily a shape but a human form who was just ripped apart and destroyed by the elements but really just lived like an animal. Think about how animals live. They live outside, they feed off the land, they find ways to survive if they don't have an owner. Think of Michael Myers as a stray rabid dog trying to fight his way through a sort of sickness which could be developed or described as evil in Myers' case, and find a way to cause destruction but have the fuel to be able to survive. Myers even goes as far as to kill an animal and eat it for fuel. However, that's what any stray animal would have to do under these conditions. But I really believe, like I said, that this movie isn't about Michael. It's about the mental illness, psychosis, and mental struggles that Scout Taylor Compton, who plays Laurie Strode, which we find out to be Angel Myers later in the film, has to go through following the events of the first film. It was a very traumatic experience, and on top of the metaphorical shit-flavored sundae that Scout Taylor Compton, who plays Laurie Strode, has to go through in this film, the fact that she is known as Angel Myers wasn't even revealed on her own volition or accord. It was revealed by the writer of the book known as The Devil Walks Among Us, and Dr. Samuel Loomis, who's played by Malcolm McDowell. But you could tell in the first and second film that Dr. Samuel Loomis isn't the Loomis that was created in the original universe. He's a Loomis that uses the story of Michael and the stories that he knows from studying this being to make a profit and to get financial gain. It can even be seen during a book signing in the film where one of the fathers of the victims of Myers comes up to Dr. Samuel Loomis during the book signing and says that his monster killed her. Your monster is the reason why my daughter isn't here, so to speak, and he threatens to end the life of Dr. Loomis during the book signing. But this again goes into the whole entire meaning of this film and goes into the meaning of Scout Taylor Compton's portrayal of Laurie Strode or Angel Myers. Like I said, I believe this film to be more a look at the developing psychosis and the mental deterioration and the destroying of Laurie Strode as a person. Throughout the entire film after the events of the first film, she's metaphorically fucked up. Like, she's completely destroyed. She can't really have any sort of normal conversation. She wakes up from night terrors. Little things will trigger her, which can happen with people with PTSD. And I feel like her entire embodiment in the second film is to try to avoid her past, to try to avoid what is coming for her. I feel like she knows that it's coming, but she's just doing whatever she can to avoid it. But in the back of her mind all the time, she continues to see Michael. She continues to see her mother. She continues to see, flashbacks of that night where one of her best friends was murdered by the monster known as Michael Myers. And she was just continuing to fight and try to get away. You can see in the film she goes to therapy and she does whatever she can. But it's like she's fighting a losing battle and she just eventually has to give in. And this plays directly into what we see in the beginning of the film with the description of the white horse. According to the film, the white horse is linked to instinct, purity, and the drive of the physical body to release powerful and emotional forces, like rage with ensuing chaos and destruction. That plays directly into the meaning of Myers throughout this second film. His entire being, his entire mission is to carry on the destruction, to carry on the killing, to get where he needs to get in order to reunite with his family. But the entire mission for Laurie is to try to avoid reuniting with her family. But the tagline for the second film is "Family is forever." And that again plays into how the entire film plays out. Laurie is trying to avoid the psychosis and the mental breakdown and avoid what her true calling, even though it's fucked up, her true calling and her true meaning is. And she's doing whatever she can to avoid it. And at the end of the film, it just becomes too much. And she finally meets her family. She finally kind of throws in the towel, metaphorically, and gives in to this psychosis and finally has that breakdown. It's kind of a psychotic breakthrough more than a breakdown. And even in the film, you see her inside of a white padded room, which is subsequent with mental illness and destruction and psychosis. And she finally gives in and becomes what she's always been, which is a murderous monster just like her brother, no matter how hard she tries to hide it. I think this film is heavily underappreciated. I know it's not everybody's cup of tea, but that's kind of what Rob Zombie's film directing is. It's dark, it's twisted, it basically doesn't give a fuck, and it pushes the envelope in every sense of the word. But I feel like he was able to develop the scariest and darkest version of Michael Myers as a character from any film in the entire franchise. He was the first person to finally be able to give that sort of realistic feel to this monster. It's almost as if you could find a monster like Michael, obviously not pushed to this extreme, but you could find a monster like this out in the real world. He was kind of birthed in the elements. He was walking around out in the open, even though most people couldn't see him. And that's the scariest part. Like, this version of Michael that Zombie created was out in the real world. And it kind of gives a foreshadowing of the world now. Like, the monsters that we were afraid of as kids are kind of all around us now in the real world. So I enjoyed it. I think it's really heavily underappreciated. I think the film gets disrespected. Obviously, it's not everybody's cup of tea, but Rob Zombie's films directing and his overall grit, grime, sex-driven style isn't for everybody, but I think he hit the nail right on the head. I think the second film is better than the first, but again, you really have to look into the film for what it is and not just what you see on the surface. You have to dig into it, and I think he did that on purpose. But I hope you enjoyed this retrospective on Rob Zombie's Halloween 2, and there's going to be more to come to the channel. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and slash the notification bell so you don't miss any future discussion videos that are uploaded to the Touch 'em Up podcast.